In today's video, we are going to take two of my favorite hobbies, crocheting and quilting. We're going to combine them and make a project that you will be proud to show off. Hi, this is Kara with DIY on the House, and I thank you so much for joining today. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing because this is one of many videos that we have to show you DIY crafts and repairs for your home. As I said, today we are going to combine quilting and crocheting to make a really sweet table runner. I am super fortunate. My mom is a very talented crocheter as well as a quilter, and she did pass that on to me. And so here are some pictures of my mom's creations. She's done a Lord's Supper, she's done christening gowns for our kids, she has quilts hanging on her walls. So today we are going to take quilting and crocheting and make a table runner that is super cool. To start making the table runner, I have pre-made 4.5 inch quilt squares. So I cut them 4.5 inches. I fused interfacing on one of the sides because I wanted it to be nice and crisp looking. I didn't want it to be wimpy. So I really prefer using, it's called Woven Fuse, and you can purchase it online at gotinterfacing.com. So I put interfacing in the middle of each of the squares. I folded over the end that was open and just stitched it across. I didn't bother slip stitching it closed. I just went ahead and used the machine because we are going to be sewing over this with our thread anyhow, and it doesn't distract from the pattern. But if you choose, you can whip stitch the edge closed instead of using the machine. Okay, so it's a couple step process. We've made the square. I'm going to show you how you blanket stitch the edge, how you crochet a border on it, and then how you stitch them together. And in the end, we will have a table runner or a blanket, whatever you choose, but I'm going to be making a table runner. So to get started, I just have one square here. The yarn that I chose is the silky kind of texture. This one is actually at Hobby Lobby. You can use any texture you would like. I would just suggest something very lightweight that isn't super bulky. You will also need a sharp yarn needle. It has to have a pretty good point on the end with a big enough eye for your thread. So you cut a piece that is 4 times around the distance of your square. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that makes 1 time around. There's 2, 3, and 4. And then I just give it a couple more inches after that. I'm going to show you how to do the blanket stitch depending on your personality. If you're a person who likes things very precise, by all means, make it very precise. If you are someone who just likes it to be close enough, then you can do it either method. If you want it to be super precise, you can use a ruler, but I'm going to show you what I did. This is roughly, well, it's actually almost a 1/2 inch in all the way around my stitches. And it looks like they're about 3/8 inch apart. So when I'm doing my stitches, they are even, but not super even. So I just eyeball it. If you want to not eyeball it, I would take a ruler and I would make a mark every 3/8 of an inch and have a dot where you want your blanket stitch to go. So I make a small knot in the end and try to make it as small as possible. So there's a knot, and on the edge that I did my sewing, I insert my needle in that seam. So right now I'm in between, so I'm not coming out the back side. I'm in between my layers of fabric. So I did front and back the same fabric. You can do whatever you want. So I'm going to come up about a 1/2 inch in from the edge and about a 1/2 inch in from the corner. So I am in a corner here and I'm going to pull, and that is fine. I'm going to leave my little tail sticking out there. So to do a blanket stitch, you always go from the same side up. So the way I have come up, I need to come from the back and up at all times. If you happen to start where you're going from the top down, always go from the top down. But on this one, I'm going to always go from the back forward. So I'm going to go in that same hole. I'm going to bring forward my yarn. And before I pull it tight, I am going to put my needle and thread through the top loop there. Don't pull it super tight, but just kind of take the slack out. From the back again, I'm going to go over about 3/8 of an inch and down a 1/2 inch. So I've come over about 3/8 and down about a 1/2. I'm going to pull before it, and this does tend to happen with this yarn, it gets a little knotted up in the back. So I hold my slack there with a finger, and I go from the bottom up through that little slack, and you can see how we are going to start making the blanket stitch. This first stitch here is going to have the tendency, look at that, it's going to pull at an angle, which is not what the end result, that's not the end result you want. But that will remedy itself. When we come all the way around, I will finish off by catching that stitch. So don't worry about that right now. If that goes down at an angle, it's going to get taken care of at the last stitch. So I have come around, I've went through the top, and I'm going to go again a 1/4 of an inch, I'm sorry, I'm going to go 3/8 of an inch over from the back, and I'm going to pull up the thread. Again, put my needle in that loop, pull it kind of tight, not tight, kind of in the between, and continue around. Keep my finger there, go in the loop. I find myself always wanting to fuss to make sure that those are straight because it does get a nice clean finish look, but in reality it kind of takes care of itself when I start doing the crocheting in these holes or in the stitches. So do as uniform as possible, but it does kind of even out on your next step. Okay, I'm getting close to this last corner, and depending on how well I eyeballed it, if I put one stitch right here, that looks like it's going to be a pretty good location for the next stitch. You might just have to fiddle-faddle with it a little bit and split the difference, because I love the way this looks, but I am not a perfect person on measuring things. I just eyeball it to make it look as good as possible. So I'm going to put my needle in between the difference there, continue as normal. But now I need you to pay attention how I have figured out to do the corner. If there's a different way to do this, please let me know. I have played with this enough that this works for me, but I'm sure there's other ways to do it. So we have went through our stitch. We're going to go in just as if we're continuing, we're going to go into the back to the front, but this time I am going to put my needle just in the tip of that fabric because I want this to be a nice square corner. So I have went under my loop, but I have caught some fabric with my thread, and I'm going to pull that, and I'm going to loop around that thread just one time. There we go. And now we have a nice angle, like a 45-degree angle. I'm going to go from the back to the front, catch my loop, and now you can continue across. So the reason we need to have these the thread up here is because that is what we are going to double crochet in. So I kept fussing to try to make sure we had thread on the top so we could double crochet. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue this side, and do the corner. And when I come back, I will show you how we meet up with the end to finish off this stage. Here's the corner one more time. So I'm going to go in that same stitch, going to catch just a little bit of the fabric in my needle, grab up my loop, go around that thread just one time, inserting it in that same hole, come from the back and to the front and catch the loop again. And here we go across. I'm around to the last corner, and this one, it doesn't look like it would be super natural for me to hit that same stitch that I began with, so I'm just going to do it a little closer to the corner and do the corner just as I've done all along. Put a little bit of fabric under that needle, go around it again, come up from the bottom, catch the loop. As I said with the beginning stitch, now you pick up that loop, and that is how we're going to finish this off. So I catch a little bit of fabric and I just try to secure it. You don't want to stitch in your little gaps here because that's where you're going to put your crochet stitches. So stay on top of one of those posts and just kind of wrap it around a little bit. I did 2 there. You could tie a knot, it's just I had no success in hiding it. So now I'm inserting my needle in between the layers again, and I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to just try to hide it and go back that way. Oh yeah, that looks okay. So I am going to snip that thread off, and now our next step is to put crochet thread on it. Here is a yellow square that I have completed. So I'm going to go ahead and crochet on this gray square so that I can show you how these join, because the pattern that I am doing is gray, yellow, gray, yellow, gray, and so I needed to have 2 opposite colors. So I use a smaller hook. This is a size D, and that is what makes these crochet stitches around. It does tend, if I was gonna lay, yeah, see that happens. If laying this flat, the corners do pull in if you were gonna leave it like this, because I have not blocked this or anything. So if yours pull in, don't worry, that it works very well for what we are doing. So I'm gonna set that aside. To start with, you need to make a slip knot around your middle and index finger is how I do it. Twist and pull up the thread. And you can pick anywhere along the side. Just I found not picking a corner is better. So I am going to just insert my hook underneath one of these bars that go along the edge. So I'm just going to insert it there. And draw through my string. There we go. And to start with, I chain 1. I don't have a pattern for this. I saw a picture and I just loved it, so I kind of just figured out how to do it. So I'll have the description of how you do this on our website at diyonthehouse.com, and the link will be down below. So I have chained 1, and now I'm going to single crochet. I'm going to, all along, I'm going to be hiding my tail in my single crochet stitches. So the big picture, we're going to put 2 single crochets in each of these squares. So I'm going to skip across and do 2 single crochets, 1, 2, catching my tail in my stitch there, go to the next square and do 2 single crochets, and now I'm in the corner. I'm going to do 2 And after this one, I'm going to snip that tail so it's not in our way anymore. So there's 1, 2, and on a corner, you need to have 2 stitches here, 2 stitches here, and 3 on the corner. So that was 2. This is 1 for the corner. This is 2 for the corner. And 3 for the corner. We're all in the same little square still. Now I'm going to do 2 for this side. 1 and 2. So let me lay that down. I'm going to go ahead and snip that tail because the tail has been encased all along here, so it's nice and secure. So I'm going to take that tail out of the way. And we have 2 single crochets in each of the boxes. 2 here, 3 on the corner, 2 on this side. Now I can continue 2 single crochets all the way around and do the same thing on each corner. So I'm going to go ahead and continue and show you how I join and do the next row. I'm to my last square here, so I do my 2 single crochets. And I am going to put just a slip stitch in the top of that first single crochet, and that is going to pull my row together. So at this point, you have single crochets all the way around. Even if some of your boxes are narrower, you still want to put 2 single crochets in there, because the next thing we're going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and we're going to do the best we can to line the double crochets up with this stitch, so it gives the illusion that the double crochet was a continuous stitch from here down to here. So to start that, we have slip stitched to the beginning of that first row. So we are going to chain 4 to start your row. 1, 2, 3 for your double crochet, and chain 1 for the one in between. So chain 4, and lining up with this one, in that stitch there, you're going to do a double crochet. A double crochet is you loop it over first, draw it through 2 on the hook, draw it through 2 on the hook. Chain 1, loop it over, line up with this post, and do another double crochet. Chain 1, line up with this post, and a double crochet. Chain 1, line up with this post, and double crochet. So we're almost to a corner here. I'm going to go ahead and do my double crochet on the top of that post. And on corners, you always need to add extra stitches. So I'm going to do my chain 1, and I am going to, in this corner here, I am going to put 2 double crochets on this side, 3 in the middle, and 2 on this side. So in the 3 stitches that make up that corner, I am going to do 2, 3, and 2. So going to insert my hook. I've already chained 1. I'm going to insert my hook and do the 2. These do not have a stitch in between. So there's my 2. Now I need my 3. And now I'm going to go to the next stitch on that corner and do my 2. At the end of that cluster, I'm going to chain 1, go to the top of the next post, and do a double crochet. So let me lay that down. So when you're going across, you need to double crochet, chain 1, and you're lining up with the top of these posts. So you can see how the illusion that this is lined up. We get over here in the 3 single crochets on that corner. On this side we put 2, on the corner we put 3, and on that edge we put 2. Chain 1, double crochet. You're going to continue all the way around. When we get to over here, we're just going to join the top of this with a slip stitch, and your round will be done. I just finished my last square there. I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and just insert my hook into that space and slip stitch it together. So at this point, this is where we are. Gonna go ahead and cut a tail off. Just draw it through and weave and hide it in the top row here so that it will get hidden in our next step. So I'm just going to weave that through and draw it, and I'll trim it off after we're done sewing. So there is the next step, and as I said, these are tending to pull, they're curling in, which I've tried adding extra, I've done smaller, but this is what works well when we go sew them together. So we're okay that they're curling in right now. So right now I have the same side of the stitches facing up because they're both curling up. You can tell that they're the same side, and I am going to stitch them together. So I'm going to take the same needle as before and going to just pull off a generous yarn, because as I am sewing these, I will just leave my tail and pick it up if I have another one to sew in that direction, so I don't cut off my tail when I'm done with a section. I don't start by making a knot. I'm just going to start at the corner and weave in a little, about an inch that direction, and pull it through, leave a tail, and go back the other direction, and then I'm going to start sewing. So right now I'm just kind of locking the thread in place because I don't want to have a bulky knot there. So I have just started by doing that. I'm going to go ahead and snip that tail off so it's not distracting. I'm going to start in the 4th double crochet in this corner. I'm going to put my thread through there. I'm going to find the 4th one here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I am going to go into that same stitch and pull it together and go across and pull it tight. Go to the next stitch, match up the next 2 stitches, and just continue down the row, attaching them together. So it's making it nice and tight. When I am sewing and sitting in the chair doing it, it's actually easier to hold it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and do it that way so that you can get a different visual of it. So I'm going through each stitch and just doing a wrap around all of the thread in each stitch. As I get to the corner, I want to make sure that my corners are matching up. So I'm just going to adjust them to make sure that we're okay there. And continue to that same number 4 double crochet on the corner. And that is where we're going to end this seam. Get that tail out of there. Okay, so I'm 1, 2, 3. It looks like I got to do one more. And there's number 4. So now when we lay it flat, you have your seam to your corner. Yeah, you have your seam on each corner, and now you can continue your pattern. So I am going to leave this yarn and just take out my needle and start my next section. So here's my work in progress. These 2 squares here can easily fit there, so I don't want to cut this off. I will continue, and I'm going to go down this direction and leave my thread hanging so that when I'm ready to join these, I have a continuous path as much as possible. Okay, I am super excited. This turned out fantastic. Here is the completed project. You can make it as big or as little as you want. I wanted a nice table runner for spring, so I picked grays and yellows and connected them with the gray crochet thread, and I think it turned out fantastic. If you ever have any questions during your project, please comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But as always, thanks for joining DIY on the House.